I mean, the first thing I would do is that they did a really interesting thing when the Big Bash was first marketed. They took the word cricket out of it. And they weren't, I think they did a whole document where you weren't allowed to use the word cricket. And everything in their promotions was not using the word cricket. And I think that I understand why they were doing that. But basically, that's admitting that your product is the problem. And cricket as a product is not the problem. The way it has been marketed over time has been absolutely horrendous. For instance, I don't think I've ever been in a test series where the opposition has been marketed. And it's like South Africa are turning up in Australia. Dale Stein's coming to your thing. Literally, it should be Cricket Australia's job to make Dale Steyn into the biggest hero, villain, figure, whatever you want when he turns up. And we've seen, I think if you look at the 2005 Ashes, that happened naturally through Shane Warne and through the Australian team. And that actually worked brilliantly from a marketing perspective, right? So from a very basic perspective, that's the first problem. The second one is that a lot of the people who don't try and market Test cricket specifically still look at Test cricket as this genteel relic thing. And it's like, I remember when I was talking to, when we were trying to do some bits for our film, and they were like, they were trying to push, the editing team were trying to push this sort of genteel, and I was like, Test cricket's violent. It's hard. It's like a grunge song, right? Like it slows down for a little bit and lulls you in, and then bang, the guitars hit, right? It really has this huge power. Where's that in the advertising, right? Yeah. And so what I talked about was that, and so that's another thing that for Test cricket. But I think more than anything, it's like I don't think we grow heroes and villains and matchups and all those sorts of things that almost every other sport in the world does. And I don't know if that's part of the nationalism sort of angle of this sort of thing, but from a nationalist point of view, I think that's really important. But even when you look at the league cricket, I don't think we do that properly. And I don't think we celebrate what is fascinating and interesting about cricket. And I suppose that's kind of what my YouTube channel is about, right? It's like finding the fascinating and the weird and the brutal and the fun parts of cricket. And it's very, very rare that I see that. Most cricket advertising or marketing is either pretending it's not cricket, which is weird, or the other thing is what they do is they try and play on the cultural stereotypes of cricket. I remember that, was it the Crick Buzz ads a couple of years ago? I think maybe Sony have done this. They do it in England with the way that they market cricket. And it's like, cricket doesn't have to be marketed in that cultural stereotypy way of what cricket is. Cricket is a brilliant and brutal and changing and visceral experience on its own. That's kind of the way that it should be marketed and pushed around the world. And for me, that's been cricket's biggest problem, is the inability to... cricket's almost so polite that it won't just say... Why doesn't the ICC just bring out a marketing campaign that is, we're the world's second biggest sport? All right. And I remember this with Cricket Australia. I talked to Cricket Australia people this years ago. They were going on and on. Oh, Jarrod, you have to understand that AFL is this and rugby is this. And I said, why don't you market yourself as Australia's sport? They don't play footy in half the country. They don't play rugby in half the country, right? Market it that way. Exactly the same. If cricket starts saying it's the world's #2 sport, who's going to complain? Tennis? Basketball? Good, then they can have their own marketing campaigns, right? Literally start saying, we're the world's second biggest sport. Let's start pushing that rather than something else, right? And I really think that, there's a real apology in all cricket marketing. Whether it be the Big Bash not mentioning cricket, or whether it be, the sort of the cultural side of it. And it's nonsense, and we should definitely have moved on from that. That Big Bash is the same people who sort of came up with the idea for the Big Bash came up with 100. So they're directly linked to each other, realistically. Even it's all the same thing. Like Modi getting the Bollywood people involved is to make it cooler. And I kind of get it, but it's like, do you know why Hollywood people and rappers and singers started coming to NBA games? Because the NBA was cool, right? It's not the other way around, right? It's not Like rappers use the NBA to have street cred. And we brought Bollywood actors in who aren't particularly cool anyway, let's be honest, right? You know, they're not cool, they're popular. But we brought them in, and it's a backwards way of seeing it. I understand what Modi was trying to do, don't get me wrong. I think it's a really good idea. And you see the 100 trying the same sort of thing this time. But work on the product, work on the marketing, work on the heroes and the villains and the cool stories and all that sort of stuff. I kind of think people come to that, and I'm talking everything from celebrities to down to normal people like us, come to it normally. And I think cricket's always gone about it the other way.